Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my photo editing live stream where you can submit your images before the stream starts, and I edit them here for you live using DxO Photolab. I'm on version 9.10, and the idea here is to show you my workflow for editing and some of the tools in DxO, and just sort of like a virtual look over my shoulder tutorial, if you will, on using DxO Photolab. So if you're new to Photolab, welcome. And if you haven't tried Photolab yet, you can use my affiliate links down below with a 15% discount coupon to get started. As many of you know, Photolab is my editor of choice. I use it for 99% of all of my photos. And, you know, look at this as a virtual tech support. I always do the best I can. So every 2 or 3 images, I like to stop and answer any questions in the chat section. And, you know, uh, but this is not a critique or judgment of any kind. This is simply me editing the photos from, just so you can see the workflow basically and the tools. And I'm going to edit them just like I would edit my own photos. So a lot of the choices I make are going to be very subjective. So I get a little artistic license. Uh, but again, it may not, my vision of the photo may be different from yours, and that's okay. So with all that said, let's get started. And see if I can pull up the right screen. All right, awesome. Looks like we're working today. So we'll start here, one from John Gavin. And okay, so we have a little tree and a reflection. So when I look at the image, I try to look at the overall composition, the exposure, the white balance, just sort of the macro side of it, right? Like I look at the big picture and try to make those adjustments first. Any kind of geometry changes like straightening the horizon, uh, that's it's pretty critical in that sense. Any changes you make to the perspective, like keystoning uh, and horizon, right? Because when we get into the local editing and local adjustments, they don't follow the geometric changes you make. So it can be a big problem if you make a lot of local adjustments, which is primarily how I operate. Now, so this picture is well exposed, white balance is fine, and horizon is fine. So not much I need to do on a macros, in a big picture kind of way. But I'm thinking, um, you know, cropping or composition in that respect to try to give some balance and maintain the environment, or the story, if you will. And I think here, just looking at a little closer, there's a little something to be said right in here. Okay. But then, this tree being just kind of in the middle of the waters with this reflection. And there's a little bit of color here we can grab onto. But there's not really a lot of color. It's mostly just green and white with just tiny bit of yellows in here. Um, that's my overall thought. Now, when we get into editing, the first thing I like to do is just apply a default preset that I created. You can download that for free from my website, robtrek.com. And it works for Photolab 9. If you have older versions, it may or may not work for those. But so I'm going to go ahead and do that first. And what this does is it applies the key technologies of DxO Photolab, which is the optical corrections and denoising. So my default preset that I created just adds a tiny bit more sharpening and chromatic aberration type stuff, but it's nothing major, as you can see. It doesn't really change the image much. It just optimizes the original raw file, pre-processes it so that I have a good starting point with decent sharpness and less noise if it's there. Gosh, this composition, I'm thinking I just want to balance this a little bit. I'm not crazy about all this brush in the foreground. Maybe go to a 4x3. And just come in right on the tree. Okay, and then I like to make the water a little bit shinier and fade off the background a little bit and maybe temper some of the highlights on this tree. Let me just take a quick look at black and white. So, you have all your control panels up here. This is the color panel, and I'm gonna just see what it looks like. I think we have pretty good separation here, even in black and white. So I'm gonna go with black and white. And I have a couple of different profiles here I can use, faded or balanced. I think I'll start here. And then I'm going to use the AI tool here. So I'm going into local adjustments and I'm just going to do select background and see how that works. And just FYI, I had some trouble with my computer earlier this week. Uh, so if it crashes and the stream goes down, I'll restart the stream, but you'll have to find the new link on my channel. Okay, so it didn't find the background. I'm sure it'll certainly find the tree if I just select it this way. Because what I want to do actually is I want to brighten this about maybe a half a stop. And then go to the global and just bring it down about a half. All right, that's good. Just give a little more separation. And then let's temper the highlights just a tiny bit. And then add some micro contrast. Tiny bit of clear view. Now let's go ahead and make a new mask. And we'll select the water. Let's see if we can get the water in there. Not all at once. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do shift and click on the mouse and just select the parts of the water that I want to get until everything is it's pretty much there. Okay, that's good enough. And to make the water a little shiny, I just add some clear view. Just a little bit extra pull on the blacks. And that's good. Okay, let's add a little bit of vignette. So you can do that with a control point. And I'll put the vignette right about here. And then I'll just turn the chroma and luma off to 0. Invert it. And then just start pulling in using the selective tones. And whenever I use selective tone, I like to keep a straight line. I think that looks the most natural when I'm making these adjustments. Okay, and then that looks good. And then now let's add just a couple of highlights back in. So I'm going to use the control points again with under a new mask here. And I'm just going to just bring a little bit more light here. Maybe a little bit there. See if I can soften that a bit. All right, I think I'll call it there. So, and we'll compare it to, so there's the original full image, and there's the edited image there. I think that works pretty well in black and white because this is a very flat image to begin with. And we'd still maintain good separation even in the black and white. All right, let's go to the next one. And all right, this one is from Cynthia. And we have some good texture right in here, and then it falls off on the depth of field. So I'm going to hit the F9 key to bring my side panels back in. This one has some interesting colors. So let's start with a default preset. And I'm kind of leaning in towards just cropping in right here. So I don't see anything over here on the right side that works. And we'll do a square crop. So this is the geometry panel here. I think that works. And then the light is coming slightly, it looks like, from the left side, based on the way, it's darker over here significantly. So I'm thinking, let me just, and I just tapped the R on my keyboard. I'm going to center this part right here. So I'm just using the grid lines. Okay. So I might add a little bit of warmth here on the left side, but just on the highlights. So I'm going to use a control line and just come up to here, and I'm going to put the eyedropper on the brightest part, which was right in here. And then let me stretch that all the way out, nice and gradual. And just tighten up the luma mask. So you have luminosity and chroma masking here. I just want to do it on the luminance or the brightness. Okay, let's oh, this is a JPEG. So I'm not really going to be able to adjust the white balance here. For whatever reason, local adjustments, they disable the white balance sliders. And I understand why, from a technical point, because the white balance is in the demosaicing engine, not, not in the already, done raw image or done JPEG image. But they should let us do that because we have a color wheel here. Let me just increase the saturation a bit. I'm going to do it this way. And then we'll go back here. And we're just going to warm it up globally. Just a tiny bit. And then I'm going to go back here. And then let's make a new mask, and then coming in from the right side, I'm just going to put the dropper more on the darker parts. Just going to desaturate a little bit. I don't know if I can shift the colors. And shift them a little bit cooler this way. And then let's just desaturate just a tiny bit. Let me go back to this one. I might be able to do the same thing. No, not really. All right, now let's go back to the global panel. And let's throw in some clear view and some micro contrast. And then I'm going to crank up this red color right here. I guess it's more orange. Like so. That made this side look a little purple. So let me go back here to this one. Is it this? Yeah, that's the right one. Let me shift it. Right about there. We'll desaturate just a bit more. And then I'm going to go over here, back to the color panel, and just add a little more warmth. Let's go to the light panel. And let's just add in a little bit of light here. And then I think a vignette and we're done. So new mask, control panel, I'm sorry, control point, and then 0, 0, invert. And let's just pull the selective tones in. All right. So that's the original on the left. And here's the edit on the right. Now, if I had a raw image, I would have probably gotten a little better because of the white balance. I would have probably done a little better with my initial vision for this photo. But I think that works pretty well. Good saturation, pretty decent sharpening. Yep, looks good. All right, let's go to the next one. This one is from Jeff. Okay. Oh, that's cool. Again, the F9 key to bring the panels in. That is an awesome shot. So let's apply. Since we filled the frame with the subject, I'm going to go with an extra sharp default. Again, these are downloadable from my website. And so it's basically the same as the default, but just, more aggressive sharpening. I think I can go right to the local adjustments because the framing and everything is fine. So let's select the water. Just add some clear view and just pull it in a tiny bit. And then there's a little bit of color on this dolphin right here on the nose. So let me select that and just see if I can amplify that a bit. And then let's just add a little bit of light, extra light around the eye. Oops. DxO remembers the last size control point that you use, so when you click again, it'll use that size. But I'm just gonna add a little bit extra light here. Always like a little extra light in the eyes. We'll spread that out a bit. Okay. And then let's go back to the, let's select the entire dolphin this time. And I'm gonna just give the dolphin a bit more texture as well. All right, let me go back to the water. I want it a little bit darker. Maybe give it a little more saturation. So I like the color. And then the last thing I'm going to do is just see if I can make the water a little more specular. So I'm just going to use the auto masking brush because in this scene it would be a little bit more random, I think. Like that. And I'm just going to give it micro contrast. Maybe push the highlights. Oops, not that much. Just a touch. And then let's do the same thing, but let's darken a little bit here and there. All right. I'm going to add a little bit of warmth to the dolphin. Let me go back to this. Let's see, it was mask number 4. All right. So F9 key. And that's the before and after. So again, the raw images tend to be a little bit flat and lower contrast. So in your editing, you want to, add a little saturation, a little sharpening, and then from there you can be kind of creative, like, uh, making the speculars and saturating the water a bit more, things like that. But I think that looks pretty good. We can just do a slider. Some people like to see it this way. But that's the before, and that's the after. All right, let me go over to the chat section and see if there are any questions or anything. So I see John is here. Good to see you. Good morning. John Gavin, good morning. And Jeff, always good to see you. And good morning, Robert. Good to see you. And audio video, good. Thanks for the AV check. And Ethan is here. Good to see you. And happy National Mutt Day. Oh, I didn't know it was Mutt Day. Well, Ellie's not really a mutt. She's a mountain cur, but that's cool. Um, and good evening, Bam Sam. Good to see you. I think it's William, right? I'm starting to tie your YouTube usernames to, or user ID to what your names were before. And you're in Florence. Wow, nice. And good afternoon. And Rod Van Nelly, good morning from Vienna. Wow. And you see a face on the left side. Oh, I didn't see that. That must have been the one of the other edits, like the tree bark. Black and white is what I envisioned when you took the shot. Okay, so the black and white edit that I did of your shot. That's cool. So hopefully that's hopefully you like that. Okay. And could be a face looking at a star exploding. Oh, I see. I wonder. Let me go back to this image. So you're thinking you see a face over. I don't see it. Yeah, I don't see it. Sorry. Okay. Uh, Angela Cave, good to see you. And without taking pictures of a dragonfly, she was laying eggs and she gave me enough time to take shots. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And you added a photo this morning, a JPEG scan of a film shot using Epic Mamiya. Oh, wow. So medium format film. That's the fastest medium format film lens ever. Oh, I didn't know that. And a Kodak 200 gold. Okay, I can't wait to see it. And Heather says you added so much depth to the dolphin. Oh, thank you. And it's William. Okay, awesome. I'll try and remember with my dying brain. And you've uploaded an edit attempt for your photo. Okay, I'll take a look at that. Um, let's go back to the editing. And all right, gosh, my computer's slowing down again. But anyway, I see a little green arrow here, which means I need to download the optics module because my presets and a lot of the presets rely on the optics module being installed. So I'm going to click on that. So Nikon Z7 II with a 24 to 120 f4. Oh, that's an awesome combination. A lot of people are selling their 24 to 70 f4 to get the 24 to 120. Not necessarily because they need the range, but they think optically it's a much better lens. All right, very good. Let's go ahead and double click on that to start editing. F9 key. And so, yeah, I definitely see some perspective corrections. And these are relatively minor, so I'm okay with that. If it was way off, like if the angles were way in, I may not do quite as much. But in this case, I'll probably try and do a full optical correction or perspective correction. And then I'm going to bring out the textures and the cement and the cinder blocks here or stone work. Sky looks good. I think we're okay. So let's start with just a perspective correction. So I'm going to click on this. And oops, I'm sorry. Let's start with a preset. So we're going to do apply. And let's do extra detail or extra sharp again. And now let's do perspective. All right, good. See how it just kind of straightened that line out and didn't make this one crooked? All the lines are straight. Whenever I do architectural, I try to keep my lines straight, just force of habit. And now I'm sending a little bit more red in the sandstone. It looks like these are sandstones. So I'll try and emphasize that. And just to get kind of creative, let's see if I can do any. Yeah, I don't think that would be a good idea. I was thinking about maybe trying to make this a night scene like that. Let me try this for a minute. And then what I would have to do is add a light here. But I don't think it's going to work. Yeah, this is not going to work. So let me reset this. We'll do my extra sharp and perspective. Okay. Um, let's see if we can select the building. Okay, and the front here, this little wall. And I'm going to try and bring out those textures a bit more with some micro contrast. And some clear view. Then let's select the oranges, push into the reds and yellows a bit. Oops, maybe back off that yellow. I just want to emphasize the red bricks there, or the red in that sandstone. Okay, that's good. And then maybe give this lamp a little bit of life. So let's see. Let's use an AI tool. There we go. And I'm just going to give it some. All right, now let me darken the road. Again, I'm just using the AI masking tool. Okay. And then let's fix up the greens a bit. So I'm going to make a new mask. Use this auto brush. Let me make it a little smaller. So what I'm doing is I'm rolling my mouse on the wheel on my mouse and holding the control key at the same time to make the brush bigger or smaller. Okay. So we just need to kind of just go in here a bit. And select all channels, and let's just bring the, let's make it a little darker. Back off the saturation a bit. And when I do saturation, I like to push vibrancy first to see how far that gets, and then I'll do saturation. Vibrancy, the idea is to bring up the weaker parts of the saturation, and saturation is just a linear push on the color. Whereas vibrancy is a little bit more intelligent typically. It tries to pull in the weaker colors. Okay, let's see. I think that's all I wanted to do there. I'm just going to maybe add a little bit of contrast to the scene. Let me, or contrast on this building. So let me make a new mask, and I'm just going to select the windows again, just doing shift and click as I move the AI mask. I don't think I need to do those. Let's just put some clear view. And just pull it in a little bit and some micro contrast. Maybe even cool it off a bit. All right, good. Let me go back to the building. This one. I wonder if I just add some regular contrast. I think that's it. Okay. So I didn't have to crop or anything, other than what the perspective correction did, but that's the before. And then this is the after. We can pixel peep a little bit here. If we go to 100%, you get a better feel for, all the texture and everything that I brought out. And you can see the difference on the windows. Like so. Okay, let's go to the next one. And again, I'm seeing a little green arrow over here. So I'm going to click on that. Download the optics module. EM1 Mark II with an 8 to 18. Nice. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and apply my default preset. All right, good. Okay, I like these steps and then the sun coming in and hitting the light, or the light hitting the steps here. So I think that was kind of what you saw when you were there. The church is nice, but it's not critical to get the whole thing in there. But I might brighten up this door and this window a little bit and recompose the shot slightly with a crop. Let me just click perspective and see what happens. Yeah, it didn't do anything. All right. So I'm just going to crop. We do have some keystoning problem here. Let me go in here and just manually adjust it. So I'm going to click the reset there. And just bring those corners in a bit. So that's pretty straight. A little bit more. All right, so I'm just looking at the lines here and here. I think that's good enough. All right, let me rearrange this crop here. And I don't want too much negative space on the right over here. We'll divide the scene in thirds. So I'm just trying to create a little foreground, some midground here, and then the background will be the sky. It'd be nice if I could lead up to this door, because these steps go right to this door down here, don't they? I center the sun. I think that kind of works. All right, let me just do a global darkening. And then we'll add the light in. With some local adjustments. I wonder if I can bring out a little bit in the sky. I need to do a slight, before I do any local adjustments, just a slight horizon tilt, I think. All right. Let me see if I can put the eyedropper up here. Let's clear view, micro contrast, and a little bit more pull. Add a little bit extra warmth. Maybe just desaturate a bit. Oh, yeah, just a bit. Okay. Then let's make a new mask with control points. And I'm just going to just use control points leading up to these steps. Something like that. I really like it to be, might do a separate one for the flowers, but let me just start with the ground. So add some light back in. Like so. Yeah, extra one here. And then we'll add some warmth to that to kind of match the sunlight. Okay. I think that works. Let's add one over here. All right. A little bit more. I had to drop a clear view and some micro contrast. Okay, good. All right, and then I'm going to do something with the flowers. I want them to be a little bit brighter. So I'm going to drop a control point right on one of the flowers. And then I'm going to Let me drop another one here. I'm going to tighten up the chroma and luma a little bit. Just gradually until I'm only masking really the whites of the flowers here. Maybe a masking brush would have been better. Let's make this smaller. And I'll just drop some on the white flowers here. Okay, and we'll just push this up. Give it a little bit more warmth. A little bit extra micro contrast. Too much magenta. Back this off a little bit. Okay. Almost there. I want to darken this side a little bit more. I'll just use a control point. Oops, not that much. Let me go back to the flowers. A little more light down here. Oops. Yeah, this. It's kind of what I. It's kind of what I wanted. Not exactly. Maybe. Yeah, I can use. Yeah, I can use the same control point. Smaller. All right, last thing I'll do is this door. We'll use a control point again. We'll just tighten up the chroma a bit. Okay. Then these flowers. No, that's not doing it. Let's try. I'll just make a new control point. I just want a little more light here. Add a little warmth. And just make this side a little bit darker. Not that much. Under. Whoops. And to just get rid of one of those. All right. I think we'll call it there. So yeah, a little bit of crop and then just saturation and just adding a little bit more light coming from the sun onto the steps and flowers. Uh, I should really make this side a little bit darker. Let's see. Yeah, I'll just use a control point. I just spent time brightening up that door, but let's do it from the top. Cool it off a little bit. Just expand this. All right, now I'm done. All right. Just a little more dynamic, right? Bringing the light into the center of the frame. Over here, it's kind of off to the right side. So I'm just having the light come down the center of the frame and then cropping off the parts that really aren't necessary. I don't think we need this because the picture is not about the steeple. It's about, I think, the light hitting the stairs. All right, and I thought I saw a quick question here. I've been trying to figure out the invert shape tool. Do you have an example? Yep, and Heather says, I use it for vignetting. And then Lon says, but there seems to be a difference between invert shape and invert mask. I think he uses invert mask for vignette, yes. No preset, okay. And good morning, Kevin. Okay, so yeah, this is a little bit tricky, right? The invert shape versus invert mask. Honestly, I haven't thought about it that much. Let me see if I can, so this is not really a quick question, but the way I use invert I think is this one, right? This is invert shape. The way I use invert shape is, God, let me think about how to explain this. Like I could use it on that. Let's go over to this image here. And I'm going to apply, well, let's get the optics module. I'm going to have to give some thought to how to explain this. I'll just use it in practice though, right? So let's say I use the AI tool to select the dog. And then let me grab this and I go down this way. Just a linear line. And I make it even blurrier. Oops, that needs to be a submask. Sorry, I need to put it in the same mask. So I have mask 1. Now if I do invert shape, all it's going to do is flip it from top to bottom, right? Because it's inverting it. And if it's a circle, like a control point, instead of starting from the middle, it's going to start from the outside. Uh, whereas invert shape, it's hard to explain, but it sort of puts the mask behind the mask that's in front of it. So it's more like a layer. So right now, this control line that's doing the blurring is behind this mask. So that's what it's doing, because if I move this, so let's just look at the image, right? This is, I might have to move this up here. Oh, wait, I need to blur. Okay, now that I've blurred it, sorry, let me move this back down. And what I want to do is that. All right. So let me turn the masks on so you can see what's happening. But right now, this graduated filter is blurring everything in its path, right? In this line. But if I go up here and I do invert shape, it's going to cut that part out and put it in front like a layer. So it's putting this in front of the other mask. So I think invert shape is, I wouldn't call it that tool. It's more like a layering tool. But this is the only way I've used it. It's where now I can go back to this graduated filter and I can change the blur intensity up more. I can make this darker. Let me turn off the mask. I can make this darker now, and then I can warm it up like that. So think of it as kind of layering one mask on top of the other. So it looks like when I click the invert shape, it's bringing that mask on top. So yeah, the order of the submasks do matter though, in some cases. Because if I move this down here, you can see that the blurring of the graduated filter is still affecting everything. So I move this on top, so it's now the top layer. It's now the top layer. And think of all the mask and submask as layers. But invert shape is what actually punches it out, right? So that's why I like to call this a hole puncher. That would be my name for it, to be honest. But let me turn this off. If I just did invert mask, you can see this one is invert mask. It's not doing quite the same thing, right? It's kind of blending everything together. Whereas if I do this hole puncher tool, it pulls it out. So I'm sorry I didn't explain that very well, but hopefully demonstrating it, it makes more sense, right? So just practice with a with an image similar to this one, uh, and then get a feel for invert shape and invert mask. It's difficult for me to explain, but hopefully I demonstrated it so that you can practice and get a feel for it yourself. Okay, so I've already started editing this a little bit. So I'm going to go back to, let's make a new mask. I'm going to select the dog again. And I'm just going to just brighten him up a bit. Create a little bit more contrast, a little clear view, and some micro contrast. And I honestly, I don't want that much blur on this. Really doesn't need any, but I'll just leave a little bit extra in there. Okay, and then let me just add a little bit of light to the eyes. They're already pretty well lit, but I'm just going to add a little bit more, a little bit of clear view, micro contrast, and just going to add a little bit of warmth. I think globally it'll be fine. Let me just add a little bit this way. I think that's it. So there's the before and after. So just a little more contrast in the dog and some sharpening, and then darken the background a little bit. Maybe a little bit of a vignette with a control point up here. Whoops, is that a new one? Yeah, let's make a new mask. And invert shape. Lumen luma to 0. And there you have it. So really not much need to be done here. I think the picture looks good, almost basically straight out of camera. Uh, I did a little bit extra to demonstrate that tool, but you can see it didn't really make that much difference. The main thing was the contrast on the dog with a little bit of warming, and that's all it needed, and a vignette. Okay. Uh, let's go to the next one here. And okay, so we have, looks like a green herring. Yeah, this is a green heron. Okay, so let's apply. Let's do just regular default preset. Let's crop in nice and tight. Put him on the left side. Maybe a little bit higher up. Yeah. Okay, let's just do a global darkening because it is a bit overexposed. I'm not sure if this was an accident when you dialed in plus 0.7 over here. Probably an accident, right, Heather? You were doing something else and then came around to this guy. I think we can, let's just go down one stop. No, let's go about 2 stops there. And then on the local adjustments, let's try and temper these highlights just a bit more. All right, good. Now let's add some light back in. Let's try this. Let's try selecting the bird. I don't want to push the highlights again. I guess I could a little bit. I think right there. And then let's add some vibrancy, touch of saturation. Yeah, right there. And then let's add just a tiny bit more light around the eye. So I need to come in. Give it a little more vibrancy. And we'll do the same thing for the beak. Yeah, let's make a new mask, just auto masking. And some clear view, micro contrast. Okay, we need just a little bit more in the shadows. Where's my bird mask? This one. Maybe just a linear push. Add a tiny bit of warmth. And let's do a vignette. Okay. Um, yeah. I think that's all I would do. Maybe just give the feet a little bit more color. Let me just go in here. That's good enough. Sharpening wise, I think we're okay. Let's see if I can tweak the unsharp mask a bit. All right, this image needs to be a little bit warmer overall. Okay. So yeah, just a crop coming in and tempering all of these highlights. So I think you said you were going for exposed to the right recommendation. I have multiple shots with different exposure, but I like this one the best. Yep. Um, yeah, I guess if I was trying to expose to the right, I would be using my highlight indicators in camera and making sure nothing got clipped. And if you were doing it that way, that makes perfect sense because I was able to recover the highlights for the most part. But yeah, it's a bit tricky. I just try to make the subject the brightness that I wanted. I don't expose to the right very often personally. I just like the exposure the way it is. Um, okay, let's do the last one and then I'll get to some more questions. Okay, F9 key and let's apply. It's a lot of chromatic aberration on this. You can see it here. But let's crop in nice and tight. Maybe a square crop. And just get inside the web. Ooh. All right. Let me just globally, let's just pull a little bit in here. And I'm going to select the spider and just temper the highlights way down. Add a little color back in. I might need my glasses for this one. Oh, that's better. Okay. It's a little bit of a pattern here on the belly there, or abdomen, whatever that third segment is, or back segment is of this spider. So maybe an auto brush. Just add a little bit of light back in here. And some more. Okay, let me go back and see if we can save the highlights a little better. A little bit, yeah. Let's go back here. Just push a little bit more. All right, let's come in tighter. There's actually more detail there than anticipated. And let's rotate it this way. There's a lot of rainbow colors in this webbing. I like that. I wonder if I should see if I can. I doubt I can get just the webbing with the mask. So let's do it with a brush. No, control point will be good. I'm going to put the control point right on part of the web there. Tighten up the luma and pull back the chroma, because I want to get all the colors. And let's just amplify those. There, and then we'll do the same thing up here. Over there. Maybe some clear view. Okay. So there's the original. And there's my edit. So I added a bunch of color. It's really cool. And then, you know, inverted it or flipped it around so we're looking at it from this direction. But yeah, bringing out a lot of the colors on the spider by tempering the highlights and then cranking saturation way up. And we could do a split view and just look at the difference in detail and noise and color. I think that came out pretty nice. I love the little rainbow effect here underneath the spider as well. Okay, let's go to um, eyes are getting worse every year. Shoot, now I'm stuck. I'm gonna have to wear those all day. Anyway, let me go to the download page and see what's come in. Wow, there's a bunch here. Oops. So Chicabe or whatever, the spider one, download. Okay. Give me just about 1 minute to download the ones that came in. One of one images, Ethan's image there I need to edit. And Chicabe has a dragonfly. I can do that one. And then let's see. That's Heather's edit. And then William. A couple of puffins. Let's go back to Photolab. And there's my edit. So we'll set that as a reference. And we'll compare it to, this is Heather's edit. Okay, so yeah, I've been really saturating my images lately. I think I kind of went overboard after looking at yours. But much tighter crop on yours, obviously. The only thing I would change on yours is just a little more contrast and a little bit more on the feet. But if we come in close, uh, yeah, I'm definitely more contrasty. Okay, and then let's see, there was, this is Chris's edit of the spider. So I'm going to set that as the reference. And then my edit. So very similar crop. I mean, I think we both cropped in a bit. This is an interesting edit. It almost looks like an X-ray of the spider. Yeah, that's an interesting edit. Whereas I went on full color, right? But I think we achieved similar levels of sharpening. But I spent a little more time on this part to brighten it so that we can see sort of the yellow and blue on the back here. But okay, that's an interesting edit. I like it. It's a very different take on the same subject, right? A very different feeling between the two. Okay, and then I think those were the only two edits. So let's go over to this one. We'll start left to right. And okay, so this is a scan of a film, I believe. So I'm going to apply default preset. It's not going to do anything, no optical corrections, but it might do some noise reduction. Well, it's not going to do basically anything because noise reduction at least the D prime is based on raw images. You cannot apply D prime to JPEGs. So when I applied my preset, all we're going to get is a tiny bit more sharpening, basically, because the optics module and the denoising are essentially non-functional on JPEGs. I don't want to mess with the color too much because I want to try to keep the aesthetic of the film color. That said, when you digitize film, sometimes whatever you're using to digitize it will adjust the color. So you need a pretty sophisticated, I think it's called Silver Fast. No, it's called something. I have it in my drawer here. Yeah, it is called Silver Fast. This one. This is like this is an older version, but this is a pretty advanced um, film scanning software, and it's supposed to be the best at retaining the original film colors. Okay, uh, gosh, I don't, you know, I think the picture is fine as is. I don't really need to do any editing. But if I were to try to get creative with it, um, I think all I would do is just add some clear view and just pull the blacks in a bit. We don't even need to do that, just a little bit here. And white balance is tough to do on JPEGs because there just isn't a lot of color information, so I'm not going to bother there. Well, let's take the green and shift it a little bit warmer. Let's take the reds here and saturate those, or oranges. Just saturate those a bit more. I think that's it. So uh, my usual contrast, a little bit of sharpening, and saturation, right? And the composition is fine. I don't see anywhere I need to crop or realign or straighten. Exposure is pretty much spot on for the subject. And if I were scanning the original raw file into a TIFF or DNG, I would be able to recover the highlights back here a little bit more, but I think it's fine the way it is. There's no need to do that. All right, let's see. This looks like the next one here. Oh no, that's an edit. This one. Some puffins. I think I've done this, or a very similar one, but it was just a single puffin, not with all these other guys around him, at least not in the frame. So it's going to be a very similar edit. So let's go ahead and apply preset. And I'm just going to globally add some clear view. And then composition, I think maybe let's see if we can get a vertical. Might have to go square. Let's do 5x4. And maybe I'll brush out, I don't know, I kind of like this guy here, but I'll just brush him out. So we'll do, let's try, repair and see what we get. Okay, not bad. And then I might be able to use the hole puncher or this invert mask. But let me blur the background just a bit more. Let's try that. And then another submask. Let's select these puffins. So I'm going to do click and shift click. So it looks like I got them both. And then use the hole puncher. Ooh, this is a little bit tough. Because if I do this one too, oh, there we go. All right. And then let's add a vignette. I'm just going to add the vignette first. So let's invert mask. And just pull this in a bit. And now let's go to the eyes. So new mask, control points. Let's go right there. I'm putting the eyedropper right on the orange part of the eye. And then let's just brighten that up a bit. Some clear view and micro contrast. Can do the same thing here. Almost like a little bit of an iris in here, but I don't think. Yeah, let's stick with doing it on the reds. And I'm going to back off the chroma a bit. And maybe the luma. Okay, let me go back to the first mask. I'm going to pull this in a bit more. Just soften it a bit. And let's just add a little more brightening. Yeah, smart lighting is good sometimes. I just have to back off this a little bit on the eyes. This one, yeah, this one. Maybe add a little bit of red back in. And then the vignette. This one. Okay. So yeah, just a vertical crop, get rid of this one guy here. and then blur the background a little bit extra just to separate these two guys from the background a little more. I think that works pretty well. And then brighten the eyes up in the face. Really, really cool shot. And then let's see, was there anything else? Oh, dragonfly. All right. Ooh, the eye is just a little bit out. That's okay. Let's apply. Let's do extra sharp. Okay. I'm going to push the yellows a little bit, but let me first warm up the image slightly. And then take out a little bit of the greens with the magenta slider. So I want the yellows to stand out a bit more. All right. And then let's use a control point. I'm going to select the yellow area here. If I tighten up the chroma a bit, I should just get the yellows. A little bit of yellow here, but that's good. All right. Spread this out a bit. You make them a little bit brighter. Just a little. Okay. Then let's add some sharpening while we're in there, because it was a little bit soft. Okay, let's go ahead and select the dragonfly itself. Add some micro contrast and a little bit of brightening. And some vibrancy. And then I think a vignette will work here too. I'll go right about there, invert it. Oops, wrong button. Chroma, Luma, and just pull these in. I'm going to add one more. I don't know if I should do something here. Just add a little warmth. I don't know how that looks. Yeah, I don't like it. All right. Doesn't need quite that much. Just want a little brighter. I like that. All right. Let's use a new brush. Turn the flow down a bit. And let's just darken this. All right. Yep. So I think that looks pretty good. And then let's check the fine detail, make sure I didn't overdo it. But yeah, I think, yeah, much better. Much better there. Especially on these little fine hairs everywhere. A little bit of clipping on the yellow, because there is some texture here, but I clipped it a little bit. That's okay. I don't mind that too much. But I could temper the highlight there just a little bit extra if I wanted. But okay, let's see. Let me go back to the chat. And I think I saw a couple more questions. Uh, does the order of the sub matter? Yes, it does. Depends on what masking you're using, though. Like control points and things, it doesn't matter what order they're in. But if you're going to use the invert, I'm sorry, the invert shape, then the order matters. But when you're just using mask, it doesn't really matter what order, like control points, control lines. The order doesn't really matter. AI masking, order doesn't matter when you're talking about submasks. But if you plan on using that invert shape, then the order matters. Then it acts more like a layer. Okay. We'll practice. Okay, good. And well, I was going to, okay, yep, we saw that. And would you give a little more explanation of the unsharp mask? Okay. Uh, so we'll use this dragonfly image. So the unsharp mask over here, we have the intensity. The intensity is basically, let's say you got 2 pixels right next to each other. Intensity is just going to increase the contrast between those 2 pixels. So if one pixel is kind of a gray, the other pixel is white, it's going to increase the contrast so that the gray gets darker and the white gets whiter. Assuming it's not clipped. So if I guess if you have, so just think of intensity as increasing contrast between 2 pixels. The radius is basically how many pixels do you want that contrast to be applied to, right? Uh, so again, if you have say 2 pixels and you put in a radius of less than 1 pixel, it's going to sort of average, because pixels are so tightly packed, particularly ones that go off from each other. So let's say you have let's say if you have a box of 4 pixels, right? Then you put a radius of 0.7, which is less than 1 pixel. What it's going to do is look at pixels adjacent to each other and just try to average between those 4 pixels the contrast, right? And then just scale that up to 20 million or 60 million, depending on how many pixels you have. So think of the intensity as contrast, right? So let's pick a relatively sharp area. Okay, this is a good spot here. So we have some very sharp details here, but then they feather off, because of depth of field, right? In this case, not because we misfocus, but depth of field. But if I increase the intensity, all I'm doing is increasing the contrast, right? I'm not affecting any of the other pixels because I didn't change the radius. But if I change the radius, it's going to start to grab more and more outside of, so let's just go to 5 pixels. Now you can see all of these were affected down in here because I'm saying, okay, now look at 5 pixel radius instead of, less than 1. If I put this to 0, you can see that let me put this at point 0.1 is hard to see. But I'm going to go ahead and increase the radius. So let's zoom in here. See how I'm just basically I'm increasing the contrast, right? Because right now there's a lot of grayish green pixels around the black pixels. So if I increase the contrast, all I'm doing is making the greenish pixels brighter and the black pixels blacker, right? But I hope that makes sense. And if I increase the radius, you can see instead of just the very fine pixels, one pixel at a time, it's now doing it to several pixels at a time. And when you do it to several pixels at a time, even these areas that are out of focus, by increasing the radius, you actually can kind of make those look like they're in focus. So that's what it's doing. But then when you do it too much, right, you start to get haloing and sharpening artifacts. So you just have to keep practicing with the unsharp mask and getting a feel. But typically what I like to do is I like to be at about 150 and around 1 pixel. Usually less than 1 pixel is enough, depending on how many pixels I have. If I have 20 million pixels, this is typically what I use. And that's why I was saying earlier that my presets are really tuned for about 20 megapixels. They'll work on any megapixels image, right? But I tuned it because that's what I mostly shoot with is 20 megapixels. So you can always tweak it a little more after you download my defaults. So hopefully that makes sense. And very cool, okay? Forget what we were talking about back then. Definitely like your foliage. Oh, the green heron. I had those brighter and backed off a bit. Yep. And just uploaded my edit of the dragonfly. Oh, okay, we'll take a look. And I can get a TIFF scans for $5 extra per roll. So I have done that before, just not with that particular roll. Yep. Yeah, you honestly the if you really only need a TIFF if you're going to do some hardcore recovery. But even TIFF files have some limitations because they're set in a particular color space and a particular gamma. So even TIFF files are not quite as flexible as a true raw image. But it's the best you can do when you're scanning film, right? Okay. And then when you had the two puffins selected for the hole punch, it chose just one, but then you corrected how. I did shift and click. So we'll go back to that. So I'm holding the shift key on my keyboard. Let me reset this. So I'm going to do AI select, and I'm going to select one, right? So I click it. Now, if I hold the shift key on my keyboard and then click my mouse again, you'll notice that I created a submask, right? A sublayer. So I'll do it one more time. I'm going to select a puffin, then shift key on my keyboard, then go over here and select the next puffin. I can select another one and another one. So I hope that makes sense. So now I have 5 submasks in here. Okay. And then great explanation. Thanks. Okay. Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's no such thing as sharpening. Really, sharpening is just adjusting contrast. Now, DxO's optics module that applies sharpening does do that to some extent, where it's increasing sharpening by a certain number of pixels, whether it's a little less than 1 pixel or more than 1 pixel. But it does it intelligently based on whatever research they do, whatever testing they do with lenses and camera bodies. So it doesn't apply the same sharpening and uh, contrast. It doesn't apply the same contrast at the same pixel level across the entire frame. It does it intelligently So typically, like the corners get softer, right? So it's going to apply a little bit more sharpening in the corners of a lens than it will in the center, because usually the center is very sharp. If you try to sharpen the center when it's already sharp, that's when you start to get those artifacts, right? You get those halo rings around because the contrast is too high between the dark and the bright. And then you expand the pixels, it becomes very obvious on a lot of images where it's very high contrast. So the optics module tries to intelligently apply sharpening more in the corners or soft parts of the lens than in the center. And that's what makes DxO kind of unique, because a lot of optical corrections and other software, they just do a blanket sharpening across the entire frame. Oh, the hole puncher chose just one. Okay, so let's go back to this. You're making me practice now because it's not a tool I use very often. Uh, where's my reset? Okay, so I reset it. So let's draw a blurry line first, right? So we draw a blurry line first, and I'll just exaggerate it. And then make a submask AI tool. And I'm going to select, let's do show mask. I'm going to select this one, shift and click in this one. So the hole puncher, I have to do one, and then I have to select the other one like that. And then I'll turn off the mask. So I hope that, don't, practice one at a time and then do two at a time, then do three. You can practice in steps. So I'll do that one more time. So let's draw a blurry line. So I'm just blurring gradually from top to bottom, right? Makes sense. We're going to do a submask. We're going to select the AI tool. And I'm going to do show mask just so you can see it online, through the live stream. But I'm going to select this one. And then I'm going to shift and click and select the next one. So now I have two submasks. And then I have to do hole punch and hole punch. And that's it. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. So I think that was it. All right. So as always, thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate you sending your images and letting me edit them for you. Hopefully you picked up a few ideas. Today I had a lot more instructions or lessons. I did the best I can as we talk about live, but that's why I do these, right? As sort of a virtual tech support. I can't answer every question, and I don't always articulate things as well, particularly like this hole puncher tool. That's the way I like to think of it, because that's what it does effectively. Uh, but as always, your support is greatly appreciated through becoming a member, making a donation, or using my affiliate links down below, shopping my Amazon affiliate links, etc. It's greatly appreciated. So I'll be back, God willing, on Sunday for another live stream. I'm going to be a little bit later than I usually am on Sundays because I'm doing a photo walk Sunday morning. So Sunday will be my normal photo chat, open Q&A on photography in general. And that's it. So you guys have a great weekend. Have a good day. Try to do that every day. You'll have a good life, right? God willing. And eat healthy and exercise, because I want us all to be together as long as possible, as long as we're here on this earth. Uh, that's what life to me is all about. Friends, family, um, and our passion for photography. So thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you guys all